morning. I have thrown my glasses in the floor with my mask. I'm sweating from right here. So I'm a little hot. Is anyone else hot? It could just be me. I'm very excited about today. One, for the lesson that we're actually going to cover, but for two, and something that I think is truly exciting, this is the first day that we are actually live streaming. So the people at home, wherever you were at, I know we've got one who's in Dallas, is that right? Got one in Dallas. I know we have some in other places, but this is the first day we're actually live streaming. So believe it or not, I actually got a night's sleep last night. So we're good. We're good. Our text for today is going to come from Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 13. And so as we're in Exodus chapter 12, y'all might want to turn off the front fans. I don't care. As we're in Exodus chapter 12, this is the precursor to the 10th plague. If you'll remember the account of Exodus, so far in Exodus chapter 1, we're introduced to Moses. Moses grows up in Pharaoh's house. As he murders a man, runs away, gets married, God sends him back through the burning bush. And so he is back with Pharaoh in Egypt, and he's telling them he's gone through 9 things so far. Boils, flies, locusts. He's done all sorts of stuff. He's gone through his things. We're on the 10th one, and this is the precursor to the 10th plague. So as we go into Exodus chapter 12, we see this, I'm going to call it a very interesting story, because it gives us some promises that I think are applicable for us today. Some things that we can take from it that I want to make, at least catch our attention to, and see what we can do to make our lives better. This last plague, by the way, the plague of the death of the firstborn, is the plague that would directly attack Pharaoh. It's the plague that would attack Pharaoh because Pharaoh was a god. Every one of the 10 plagues was kind of directed towards one of the Egyptian gods. And this last plague would have been towards Pharaoh because in him, he is a god. And the son of Pharaoh would be the next god. And so the death of the firstborn across all of this would show the power of God is even greater than Pharaoh, the god of Egypt. So as we think about this last plague coming upon us, we see in verse 10, this is Exodus chapter 12, verse 10, if I can get my remote to work. Bryce, would you hit that for me, please? Bryce, I'll just tell you next whenever I need you. This is Exodus chapter 12, verse 10. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning, you shall burn. Verses 1 through 9, I'm going to have to shortcut it for you. 1 through 9, Moses gives the order of how to offer and to prepare the Passover meal. It is a lamb who is roasted, not boiled, not done anywhere else. It's roasted over a fire. You are to eat it all. And then I notice in this verse, let none of it remain until morning. Anything that remains until morning shall be burned. Now, as you read that verse, knowing that they just had this big feast, knowing that the next morning, where are they going to go? What happens the day after the Passover in Exodus? They cross the Red Sea. They leave Egypt. So that's the next thing that begins to happen in the story here. How much sense does it make to burn the food that you just cooked? Matter of fact, Bryce, go to the next one real quick for me. I think, none, and you shall burn. I don't know about your home, but in the home of Marty Watkins, leftovers were sacred. Miss Betty, were leftovers sacred in your home? Okay. Leftovers were sacred. You don't throw out leftovers. You keep them, and leftovers are good for 1 week on most occasions. And after about 3 or 4 days, what do you do with leftovers? Y'all are not very conversational today. You recreate it into something else. I've seen mashed potatoes become pancakes. Okay, so if you can take a mashed potato and make it a pancake, you can recycle anything. You take the leftovers, you recycle them, and I'm thinking when we go to a restaurant, Ashley and I went to Buffalo Wild Wings the other night, and I had a small order of wings, which was still too many wings, and I had 5 wings left over. What did I do? I took them home. I got a doggy bag, and I took them home because I'm going to eat them again later. As I think about this idea, we are used to the idea of storing food. Why would you burn the food that you could take with you on this journey? How easy is it going to be for them to prepare food while they're traveling? Not really. I mean, yeah, you don't want to leave anything for your enemy. You don't want to leave anything for ants. You don't want to leave anything for anybody else. I mean, this is something that you're going to consume, but God tells them to burn it. Why? I'm going to say, first off, I think what God is doing is He's calling them to show God's ability to provide. He's wanting the people to know that when they leave Egypt, it is truly on God's provision and God's supply that they can leave. There is nothing that they need to take with them that they've done themselves. Burn the food. You don't need to have hope in food. Matter of fact, how many of us have pantries full of food? And don't you just feel good when you have a pantry? Yeah, thank you. Don't you just feel good when you have a pantry full of food? It's like, I'm not worried. I'm not going to starve. This thing, there we go. I'm not going to starve as long as I've got my pantry full of food. And what I see here is God saying, burn your pantry. Take that doggy bag for Buffalo Wild Wings, leave it there, throw it away. And I realize that that's a message I need to hear. Is anyone here afraid of getting sick? You don't have to raise your hand. Thank you for those who did, though. Is anyone here afraid of getting carjacked? Is anyone here afraid of dying? Is anyone afraid or worried that they can't afford their bills? They can't make the payments? And when I read a passage like this, and God is saying to burn the doggy bag of food, don't take it home, what I have to tell myself is, Josh, don't worry. Now that's far easier said than done, is it not? But I have to tell myself, and I'm going to have to, and as they were leaving, how tempting would it be for them not to have burned all the leftover food? How tempting would it have been to have kept the food and to said, look, we're going to take this with us on the journey? I probably would have. I'd have been the dumb one. I probably would have said, we need this. I might get hungry. Midnight snack. Whatever you say, I'm going to be that guy. God's provision. The next verse, verse 11. If you go for me, Bryce, please. In this manner you shall eat it. So now he gives the way to eat the Passover. With your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste, for it's the Lord's Passover. Why would he tell them to eat all of this food? By the way, it's a big old platter of food by the time it's all said and done. Why would he tell them to eat it in haste and to eat it with their clothes fully on, go to sleep with your clothes fully on, ready to go? Why is he going to say that? Be prepared. God's provision calls you to be prepared for what's about to happen. You know, as I look at this, I see the escape that's coming in this verse. It's going to be a quick one. Have you ever fallen asleep at nighttime with your clothes on? You showered, you got your hair done, you got your clothes on because you know at like 3 a.m. in the morning you're going to have to go. Anyone ever done that? Okay, I got one. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Happens all the time. You know, now, or if you don't go to sleep with your clothes on, you've got your clothes laid out over the chair, And you know that when I get up out of bed in the morning, I'm going to throw this on and I've got to go. Every day. It's that way every day. Well, I'm the one that's kind of, I like to lay my clothes out. I hate looking for clothes last minute, but it's easy when you wear blue jeans and a button-up. You never have to worry. They always match. When I look at this and I see God's provision, but it's our preparation. We've got to be prepared and ready to make the exit when God calls us to make the exit. And mind you, in this account, in the Passover story, God is calling them to escape slavery, escape bondage, escape the things in their life that are truly holding them back. So when he calls them to flee Egypt, he is rescuing them, saving them, and redeeming them from an oppressive overlord. So when I come to my life today and I see the escape that God has for me, what am I running from? Am I running from my past? What things do I escape from today? Maybe I'm not running from my past. Maybe I'm running from my present, who I am today. Maybe I'm running from the things that I fear. Maybe I'm running from my own sin. And in those things, what do I tend to run to? Most of us as humans will tend to run right into more wrong. And what God is saying is, I want you to run towards me. I want you to run to the places that don't make sense. It doesn't make sense for an army of people to leave Egypt to wander into a wilderness. That doesn't make any sense, does it, Laura? No. God calls them to it. He's calling them to it because he wants to show that he can provide. But he does it because he says, I need you to be ready. This is all going to happen quick. And when it comes to me saving you from the problems, when it comes to me saving you from oppression, from slavery, when it comes from me saving you from your sins, it's going to happen quick. And I love Laura's testimony, by the way. I love Laura's testimony. If you get the chance to talk to her, talk to her. Laura's one who, I'd say the Spirit has grabbed her, it has shook her, and man, she is going for it right now. I love that about you, Laura. And that is what I see here in Exodus. I see the Spirit of God coming on the people and saying, look, it's going to happen quick. It's going to be so quick, you're not going to have time to get ready for it. You're not going to have time to get dressed. You already need to be dressed, and when I call you to leave, you need to leave. If he called and said, I need you to leave your sin, this is your sin. If he called and said, I need you to leave that, how quick are you prepared to leave? If he called and said, I need you to leave your worry, your fear, how quick are you prepared to leave that? And I see in this account that you escape the bad in your life when you're ready to run. You can only escape the bad in your life when you're ready to run. The third verse, go on for me to Exodus 12, verse 12. Exodus 12, verse 12. Bryce, please. Thank you, sir. You shall tell your son on that day. Oh, this is Exodus 13. I'm sorry, Bryce, my mistake. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. We jump forward to the next chapter, and this is the part that I find interesting. After all this has happened, after God has told the people to leave, after he's actually in the process of moving them out, he tells them the reason that I've told you to do all this is why. What does verse 8 of chapter 13 tell us? So what, give me the Reader's Digest version. Give me the non-Bible language terms. What is God telling them? This is a special day. Remember it. Teach it. Does anyone have a grandparent that told them a story about when they were a child that just was awe? I mean, you just sat there and you're like, I want to listen to this day more. Ms. Bay, do you mind sharing a moment of it? That's a traumatic story. I mean, but this is a traumatic story too. They're going to leave. For those of you who could not hear, Bae says she remembers it was your mother, right? Telling a story about her brother tying her to a tree and leaving her. And she started praying and he came back. Whew, thankfully he came back. This is a traumatic story too. The people are about to leave Egypt. They're about to leave all the things that they've grown accustomed to, the things that they feel safe in, the things they feel comfortable in. They are going to be called to leave that, to walk in a wilderness. No idea where they're really going yet. And as I think about this call, it's a call to tell the story. It's a call to pass on the history and the tradition of who they are as a people. It's a call for them to share. I had a good friend in New Mexico. His name is Mark Miller. He told me this interesting story, and it's something that I've carried with me into ministry. Mark was a phenomenal engineer, brilliant mind, almost too brilliant. You know people that are just too brilliant? If you do, you know Mark. Mark is too brilliant. Anything that he could think, I mean, his mind just worked on a different level. Mark was a personal hire by Walt Disney, worked for Walt, and he told me a story one time about it was a housekeeper on the Disney resort, and he said Walt had the philosophy that every person was a character, that every person played a role in the great story. And that as a person who played a role, he said, even the person who's the housekeeper sweeping up the dirt on the ground plays a vital role in the great cause. He said, because all of it's part of the story. It's the experience that you're going for. And he would, just highlight the valuable importance that the person sweeping the trash is, how valuable they are, and how if you made fun of them, that was a travesty. And I look in ministry, I carry that story into ministry to say that it does not matter the role a person plays within a church or within a family or within a community. Every person's role is important. It's how they contribute. You see, I take a story that someone told me about their life, and I create then a valuable application for my life, and that's what this is supposed to be. When they leave Egypt, God is calling them to continue this story, to share this story, because He wants them to find value in the story. He wants them to have a life change because of the story. And so when I look at you should tell your sons that what the Lord has done when He brought you out of Egypt, it's about the story of God's salvation, of God's provision, of God taking care of you. So how many of us today have a story where God has provided for us, where God's taking care of us, where God has done something for us? My question is have you told that story? Because a story that's told, that story that's kept only to me, a story of God's ability to provide, of God's ability to save, that's kept only for me, only helps me. And what chapter 13, verse 8 is saying is the stories of God's work in your life are stories that need to be told because those are stories that need to change other people's lives. They're stories that are called to make other people grow too. Now let's jump back for a moment. Next verse, or next slide for me, please, Bryce. This is Exodus chapter 12, verse 13. Finally, I realize that in the Exodus, or in the Passover account, God's promise is seen in that it requires something of you. Could God have saved the Israelites with them doing nothing? Absolutely. God could have, boom, Egypt's fallen, or matter of fact, he'd have killed Pharaoh, rose Moses up, and Moses been fat. I don't know what he could have done whatever he wanted to do. We come across verse 13. This is Exodus 12, verse 13. Would someone read it aloud for us? Exodus 12, verse 13. So let me ask you a question. What would happen if they didn't put the blood on the doorpost? Could God have passed over even if there wasn't blood on the doorpost? Most certainly. He has the power to. It required action on their part. There was something that they had to do that then warranted the redemption of God. Did this cost God anything? Not really. Does God value human life? Yes. Did he want to necessarily kill the Egyptians? No. Matter of fact, he hoped that they would have let the people go a long time ago. But he knew that it was going to take a long time for Pharaoh's hard heart to finally come through and say, we're going to let the people go, and we're going to send them with treasures. We're going to send them with provision. We're going to send them with everything. And I look at verse 13 here, and I see that if they hadn't have put the blood on the doorpost, would they have died as well? It requires action on our part, does it not? You see, when I look at this passage, I see the story of Jesus. Because the story of Jesus is the story of a great escape, is it not? It's the story of a great escape from slavery. It's the story of a great escape from bondage, from sin. It's a story of the great escape, but it's also a story of God's provision. Because how many of us have provided for our own salvation? I don't see hands because we haven't. God provided for our salvation on our behalf, and we are the true recipients of that. But it's not a complete passive. It's not you sit there and do absolutely nothing. It is you still have to put the blood on the doorpost of your heart. You still are called to put blood in the place so that the angel of death does not visit. There is a great judgment day coming. And if the blood of Christ is spread on a doorpost of our hearts, when that day comes, I don't walk in fear. When that day comes, I'll walk in hope and faith and belief and knowledge of God's ability to provide. And so when I see the Passover story take place, I know I'm supposed to share that story because I play a part in it as well. God's working in my life is an account that needs to be told to other people. That Jesus' work in my life is an account that needs to be told to other people. It's a responsibility on me to share that. And it's the responsibility of me to make sure that I walk every day talking about what he's done for me, how he's provided for me, and the faith that I have in his ability to continue the escape from sin in each one of our lives. Bryce, our application prayers today is by Bubba. Bryce, if you go forward 2 slides, I think that's where Bubba comes on.
Good morning, church. I don't know about you guys, but for many years I really struggled with studying the Old Testament. I wanted to stay in the New Testament, not the Old. And I always just had struggled with, how could the children of Israel keep turning their back on God after everything he did for them? And then you get the New Testament, how people that Jesus was right there with them, and they did the same thing. It just always, for a long time, was a struggle for me. But now, on my journey of life, I see myself in the Old Testament, those characters in the New Testament. I see myself how I've turned my back on God and how I have fallen short of his will. And I love now studying the Old Testament, maybe because of men like Romy and others, but I enjoy it now. And today we studied in Exodus 12 about the Passover. And in Passover was very significant that God commanded the people, like he did many things, never to forget it. And even though the Passover occurred in the 7th month of their calendar, he said this should become your first month. This is like a new beginning, a new way of life. Should be a new identity for you and for descendants of Abraham. And they were never to forget it. What he had done for them, how he delivered them, and they needed to celebrate every year with their family, and especially pass it on to their children, where they could always remember and they could pass it on to their children. And just as when we surrender to God now and come to know Jesus, the unblemished Lamb, the sacrifice for us, symbolizes a new beginning, a new life, a new identity. We should never forget it. What God delivered us from. He kept his promise. And we need to remember what he did for us. I don't know about you, but I love to see God, a new creation, where someone has come to know Jesus and they're just a totally different person. They're excited and they're like Apostle Paul. You couldn't keep them from telling the good news. I love to hear their story, and they're sharing their story, and I just love to hear their excitement and passion. It just lifts me up greatly. Anyway, let's pray. Dear God, we praise you for your word and those like Josh you have gifted to share the whole truth in the Old and New Testament. It still amazes me how many times I now see myself in your word. As I said, but I did not understand how the children of Israel before could have continued to turn their back on you. We praise you to the highest for your love through your Son, Jesus, and his love for you and for us, and delivering us from the slavery of sin. We praise you for giving us the gift of becoming a new person with a new beginning. We're here on this earth, giving us that freedom that only you can give. We give thanks and praise for forgiving us and giving others the strength to forgive us when we have messed up, especially our loved ones. God, we praise you for giving us the opportunity to be a light to others, especially in a dark world as it seems it is getting today. We all want to be that light, dear Lord. Please help us, as we can do nothing without you. Please show us the way. Please help us to see how we can help each other. Please open our eyes and hearts to love others as you, through Jesus, has loved us. Praise your holy name for continuing to speak to us through Josh. May you continue to bless him and our OCC leadership. May you open the eyes and hearts of the U.S. leadership of other countries to clearly see what this world looks like without you, so much that they will humbly turn back to you. Thank you, God, for being a promise keeper. We humbly bow and pray in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Let's begin to sing.
God bless. Have a great day.